great story has a turning point. In music, there comes a moment every decade when everything changes. But what if this change, which most of us mourned, had never happened? You've heard it 1,000 times, maybe you've said it yourself. Rock is dead. These three words haunted the early 2000s like a ghost no one wanted to admit was real. But tonight, we're traveling to a completely different timeline, an alternate present where the loudest pulse of music history never stops, a time where guitars never fall silent. If you're ready, subscribe to the channel and let's begin. We're asking the question that changes everything about modern music. What if rock never died in the 2000s? How would our culture, our youth, our entire sense of identity be different today? Let me take you back for a moment. Back to when I was young and the world made sense. Back when you could turn on any radio station and feel the raw power of a Marshall amp cutting through the speakers. I grew up in the golden age, the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s felt alive. Rock wasn't just music to us, it was identity. It was the language we spoke when words weren't enough. But something changed when we crossed into the new millennium. At first, it was subtle. So subtle you could almost miss it. Rock was still everywhere in the early 2000s, still selling records, still filling arenas, but if you were paying attention, really paying attention, you could feel the cracks forming. The genre started to splinter. Nu metal came in with rap vocals and down-tuned guitars. Post-grunge polished the edges until they weren't sharp anymore. Emo brought the feelings but lost the swagger. Indie rock went quiet, introspective, safe. None of them were bad. But none of them were what rock used to be. The danger was fading, the rebellion was softening, the fire was dimming. I remember reading an article around 2001. Some music critic trying to explain what was happening to rock. He said the lines between mainstream rock and alternative were blurring, that rock was becoming too close to pop, that the genre was losing its identity, and I thought, no, that can't be right. Rock doesn't die, rock doesn't fade. But deep down, I knew he was onto something. The music I'd grown up with, the raw, dangerous, untamed sound was being smoothed out, polished, produced, made safe for radio. The very thing that made rock powerful was being stripped away. Then came the headlines that broke my heart. Rock is coming back, they said. Bands like the White Stripes were being hailed as saviors of the genre. And don't get me wrong, I loved the White Stripes, still do. But the fact that we needed a savior, that told you everything. If rock needed to come back, that meant it had left. That meant we'd lost something. That meant the kids growing up in the 2000s wouldn't know what we knew. They wouldn't feel what we felt. But imagine a different world. Imagine if that decline never happened. Imagine if rock music maintained its grip on culture throughout the entire 2000s. If the guitars stayed loud, if the attitude stayed dangerous, if the rebellion stayed alive, what would that world look like? First, the music itself would be different. Rock wouldn't need to become a pop-rock hybrid to survive. It wouldn't need to soften its edges or polish its sound. The grit would remain, the rawness would stay. The danger would never fade. Bands wouldn't feel pressure to add electronic beats or auto-tuned vocals. They'd plug in, turn up, and let the amps do the talking. The Marshall stacks would still be stacked high. The feedback would still scream through the venues. And when you walked into a concert, you'd feel it in your chest, that physical punch that only live rock can deliver. The culture around the music would thrive. Guitar music, real, loud, unapologetic guitar music would remain the center of youth identity. Kids wouldn't grow up dreaming of being DJs or producers. They'd dream of being guitar heroes. They'd save up for their first Stratocaster or Les Paul. They'd spend hours in their bedrooms learning every riff from their favorite songs. They'd form bands with their friends just like we did. And when they finally got good enough, they'd play their first gig in some tiny club where nobody knew their name, but it wouldn't matter. Because they were living the dream, the concert culture would explode. Every weekend in every city, venues would be packed, not with people staring at their phones, filming for Instagram, but with people living in the moment, screaming the lyrics, losing themselves in the music. The mosh pits would be wild, the crowd surfers would be flying, the energy would be electric. And when you left those shows, your ears would be ringing for days. You'd be exhausted, sweaty, maybe a little bruised, but you'd be alive, truly alive. That's what rock does. It makes you feel things, real things. Think about the radio in this alternate world. Turn on any station and you'd hear it immediately. Raw, gritty riffs cutting through the static. Drums that hit like a hammer. Bass that shook your bones. Vocals that sounded human, imperfect, emotional, real. No auto-tune, no overproduction, no safety nets. Just pure, unfiltered rock and roll. You wouldn't need articles announcing that rock is coming back, because it would already be here. Stronger than ever. The fire would never stop burning. The artists would be different too. They'd keep pushing the boundaries of what a guitar could do. They'd keep writing lyrics that spoke to the anger, the frustration, the joy of being young and alive. They'd keep proving that you didn't need a computer to make something powerful. All you needed was an instrument, an amp, and something to say. And the legacy would be preserved. The defiance that bands like the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and Black Sabbath gave us, that would be passed down unbroken to every new generation. The 2000s would have their own guitar heroes, their own anthems, their own moments that defined what it meant to be young. The vocabulary of rebellion would grow larger, not smaller. The grammar of defiance would get stronger, not weaker. But here's what really breaks my heart about the world we live in. Music isn't just entertainment, it's identity. It shapes how we see ourselves, how we remember our youth, how we dream about the future. When rock weakened in the 2000s, we lost more than just a genre. We lost a piece of ourselves. I think about the kids who grew up in that decade, the ones who never got to experience what we experienced, who never felt the raw power of a live rock show, who never learned to play guitar because nobody around them was playing guitar anymore, who never discovered that sense of freedom, that sense of possibility that only rock can give you. What did they get instead? Polished pop songs that all sounded the same, electronic beats that felt cold and distant. Music that was made in a studio, not in a garage with your best friends. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all modern music is bad. There's incredible talent out there, always has been. Always will be. But something essential was lost when rock faded. Something that can't be replicated by synthesizers or drum machines. Something raw, something human, something dangerous. In our alternate timeline, that loss never happens. Rock maintains its throne throughout the 2000s. The kids growing up in that decade inherit the full legacy. They learn the power chords. They form the bands. They live the life. And when they look back on their youth, they have the same memories we have, the same stories, the same sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves. Picture yourself in that world for a moment. It's 2005. You're at a festival. The sun is setting. The crowd is massive. Everyone's waiting. And then the band hits the stage. The opening riff cuts through the air like lightning. The crowd erupts. The ground shakes. The energy is overwhelming. For the next 2 hours, nothing else exists. Not your job, not your problems, not the world outside. Just you, the music, and 20,000 people feeling the exact same thing. That's the world we're describing. A world where rock never weakened, never compromised, never faded. A world where the guitars stayed loud and the rebellion stayed alive. Where every generation got to experience what we experienced. Where the fire never went out, but we don't live in that world. We live in this one, where rock did fade. Where the 2000s marked a turning point, and I'm not going to lie to you, it hurts. Every time someone says rock is dead, it feels personal. Because rock isn't just music to people like me, it's life. But here's the thing, rock isn't really dead, it's just sleeping, waiting for the next generation to wake it up again. Waiting for someone to pick up a guitar and remember what it feels like to play something loud and raw and real. So let me ask you this, if rock had never weakened in the 2000s, what would your life be like? What songs would you remember? What concerts would you have attended? Would you have learned to play an instrument? Would you have formed a band with your friends? Would you have felt more alive, more connected, more free? Think about your favorite song from the 2000s. Now imagine it was louder, rawer, more demanding of your attention. Imagine it was played on real instruments, not programmed on a computer. Imagine it made you feel something deep in your chest, something you couldn't quite put into words. That's the difference. That's what we lost. Music is identity. It shapes who we are. And when rock faded, a piece of our collective identity faded with it. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Maybe the alternate timeline we've been describing isn't completely lost. Maybe it's just waiting to be rediscovered. Maybe the next generation will pick up where we left off. Maybe they'll remember that music is supposed to be loud, dangerous, and alive. Maybe they'll bring back the fire. I hope they do, because the world needs rock and roll. It always has. It always will. Not because it's the only good music, but because it's the music that makes you feel something. The music that connects you to something bigger. The music that reminds you that you're alive. So thank you for joining me on this journey through an alternate timeline. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video for more videos. Until next time, keep the rhythm alive, and never forget, rock isn't dead. It's just waiting for us to turn the volume back up.